Hi, I'm Phsiris, and today I'll be showing you how I produce my Psytrance basslines. The methods I show here can be applied to all basslines, whether you are working on high-tech song or a super slow prog track. Now, because I spend such a long time on my kick and bass channels in my songs, I won't be creating one from scratch. Instead, I will walk you through the creative process I use to get to the point I have with the kick and bass line that I have for this track that I am currently working on. Start off with, here is a chunk of the track as it is. And here it is with the kick and bass solid out. Now, a lot of the time when I write a track, I start by writing what I think is a reasonably good sounding bass line, but then a lot of the time when I get closer to the end of writing the track, I decide that the bass sound I originally had sounds fairly average and I could make a much better one. So I like to do an A-B comparison. Sorry. Yeah, what I like to do is an A-B comparison a lot of the time. So here's the original bass sound that I use for the song. Oops, sorry, no, that's the new one. Here's the original. As you might be able to hear, it sounds fairly floppy, nowhere near as tight as it could be, but it did serve its purpose to help me write a large amount of the track. So anyways, while I was creating the new sound for the bass for this song, I would regularly do an A-B comparison to the old one. You can do that in Ableton easily by mapping a key to the on-off functions of each bass channel in Ableton, such as go into the key mapping window. This way I just pressed 1 when one channel was on and then pressed the number 1 when one channel was off. When you turn off the key function and press 1, it switches between the two, as you can see. So now I at least know that the original sound I use is not that good and I have a better starting point for my bass now. If I later decide I don't like the bass sound I have, at least I can now do another A-B comparison to that, and there is no point deleting the current sound if I can't produce another one that I feel is superior. Alright, now on to creating the sound itself. First you need to have a good MIDI pattern. For the length of the note, the length of the note can make all the difference to the sound, but also the sound that changes because of the length of the note is also directly related to the settings of the synth. But because we're just starting out, I suggest just putting in a general dooga dooga pattern where the note length is 1/32 of a bar. Alright, so now for the synth. Sorry, need to deactivate all these additional plugins first so we can start from scratch. Okay, for this bass, I've chosen one of my standard favorites for side bass lines, Surge by Vember Audio, I think the production company is. I really only use two synths for my side bass lines though, Surge and Silent, and sometimes I use Razor and Reactor, but not very often. Anyways, I start off by generally choosing a saw wave and making sure it is set into retrigger mode. So retrigger off, retrigger on. And that is the classic saw wave already selected, or sawtooth. Okay, so with retrigger mode on, that just means that every time a new note is triggered in your MIDI sequence, that the synth will retrigger at the same point on the oscillated wave. A side bass line that doesn't have the synth set to retrigger just sounds terrible. So here's an example of it without the retrigger on. yeah, it just doesn't sound very good. So a comparison of that would be having a kick sample, and every time the kick was triggered, it would start playing at a different point in the sound. So not really desirable in this scenario. So to quickly get through the rest of this now, once I've chosen my wave for the oscillator and set the wave to retrigger, I then edit the amp envelope of the synth. Generally, I set the synth to have no attack, so that means as soon as a note is triggered, it will hit at its full volume, and then I have it so it has just the tiniest bit of release on the synth. Otherwise, I would generally end up with an undesirable clicky noise when the note is released and stops playing. The release is how long it takes for the sound to stop playing after I stop playing the note. So yeah, if I have no release, then it'll just instantly stop and just cut off and make that horrible clicky noise. Finally, I have the K at 0. The K in the envelope is how long it takes to go from the level that your attack peaks at to the level that your sustain is at. Oh no, I did miss that I have sustain at full, so that means that as long as the note is held down, the sound will be at its fullest volume. Okay, now onto the filter. This section. I set the filter to a low pass. I'm not too sure what the different types of low pass filters on this synth are, so I'm just going to say I always use a low pass filter when creating side bass lines. And pretty much everything I do from here is playing it by ear. So just play around with the filter envelopes and the filter envelope mod. The envelope mod is sort of like a dry wet on how much the filter envelope affects the cutoff on the filter. But generally, for my filter envelope settings, I have no release, about a quarter on the decay, and sustain. It really does depend what sound you're going for, but if anyone wants, I can upload a bunch of surge and silent presets to my website for free download. So once again, here's the sound before any additional processing. It's alright, especially for no processing, but still pretty crappy. But we are about to fix all of that. So here is the effects chain that I have one by one. Now, this is a process that generally takes me forever, and I have no set standard way of doing this. I generally just sit down and play around until I'm happy with the results, and yeah, generally just don't be afraid to go crazy, because at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it sounds good. So yeah, once again, the first plugin I have is Waves X Noise. I have this in just to reduce some of the click. Oh, sorry, I have this plugin just to reduce some of the click from the synth. I personally hate clicks in my side bass lines, so a lot of the time I would just put this plugin at the end of the chain, but for some reason this time around I put it at the end. At the beginning of the chain. But I don't know, it seems to be doing its job as far as the end result of the sound goes. Secondly, I have an EQ8 from Ableton to cut off some of the very top frequencies. Still nothing very special happening. Next I have, alright, nope, turn that one on. Next I have a compressor that is compressing pretty hard. It's set so I have a bit of an attack, 20 milliseconds, so the original punch can sneak through, and then a long release, so the rest of the signal is compressed, and then I boost the output of the compressed signal by 10 dB. Next up, another EQ8 to just another EQ8 to cut off some more of the tops that came more apparent after the compressor, and also some other slightly treble frequencies that I wasn't a fan of. I generally find these frequencies by doing a boosted EQ sweep and then cutting anything that doesn't appeal to me. So an EQ sweep is when you just boost it and sweep through the frequencies to listen to something that you don't find very appealing. Next up is my go-to Multiband Dynamics plugin by WaveArts. This basically helps compress and control select frequency ranges within the sound. So here I am only compressing the frequencies between 70 Hz and 2 kHz. The two other bands are bypassed, so therefore like turned off, and that is the only band that's compressing at the moment. So let's see if we can do a sample of that. So that's with it on, and that's with it being bypassed. Next up is another Multiband Dynamics. This one I've gone a little bit crazier on. There's 4 different types of compression. There's compression on 4 different frequency ranges. Nothing's soloed out. It shouldn't be soloed out. Yeah, no, it wasn't soloed out. So all 4 different frequency bands are compressing differently in one way or another. Here I'll just turn them on and off to show you the difference. So as you can see with the 2 middle bands, they made actually quite a big difference to the sound itself. Next up is another EQ8. Yeah, just to cut out some more of the tops. Then I have Trash 2 by Isotope, which is a multi-band distortion, so I can choose the frequency ranges that I distort and how much. Sometimes I do drive certain frequencies in my bass, but this time I've just used this plugin without distorting anything. I like the sound of how when the multiband function is turned on, the crossovers affect certain frequency presence. So I believe it has done some slight dipping of some frequencies. It's just has a slightly better sound now after turning it on. So in this scenario, it'll have dipped roughly around 533 Hz and then also around 2 kHz. So here's whether it's on and off. A very slight difference, but to me, I preferred it with it on. And then again, another multiband dynamics. This time split into 3 different frequency ranges between 0 up to 150 Hz, 150 up to 2.5 kilohertz, and then 2.5 upwards. So here is it with different bands being turned on and off. Alright, I should mention as well at this point in time, or I should have mentioned it before, that the whole time that I generally go through this process, I have another EQ8 that is set to cut off all the frequencies roughly or above 100 Hz mapped to the keyboard that I can turn on and off, so I can reference the sub and low ends of the bass when going through this process. So on the master channel, I have the EQ8. to the plus sign of my keyboard, so I just press the plus sign and it turns it on and off. I do this because I don't really have the best speakers, and I feel like this gives me a better representation of the low end, and also I can try and match up the low intensity of the bass with the low intensity of the kick. This way, when songs get played out on a big system, they will seem a lot more rolling when they have a lot more bass presence behind them. Alright, back to the chain. Another EQ with a dip around 240 Hz, where I felt like that was a bit of a problem frequency that could have been reduced. Also, just reducing some of the frequencies above 13, 14 kilohertz. And then we have a compressor that was meant to be at the end, because that should be acting as a sidechain to the kick. And then I have Ableton's utility, where I've used it to just set the width of the bass line to 0%, so it acts as a mono signal, so it doesn't potentially get any phasing issues, and it just, straight down the center. Then finally, two more, just an X noise to get rid of a little bit more of a click at the end, and then another EQ8 to also reduce some more of the high ends that I didn't feel very desirable. And then at the end, the compressor that should be sidechained to the kick. This is another one to play around with, where you can get many different desired results. So just play around with the different settings on the compressor. On the compressor. Anyways, to summarize, what I would try and take out of this video is synthesize as good of a bass sound in the synth first, then EQ out trouble frequencies where needed, multiband compress frequencies where needed and as desired, multiband distort frequencies as desired, and mix and switch up the process as much as you need to leave yourself with a cool sounding bass. So once again, here it is with the part of the track that I've been working on. Cool, hope you learnt something from this video, as long and winded as it was. If you have any questions, just send them my way. Cheers.